Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
Many former federal employees are navigating the job market for the first time in years, only to find that the rules around hiring and networking have shifted. Research suggests that the process feels more transactional, but that doesn't mean experience and competence no longer matter. Helping us make sense of the new normal is Managing Director of Business Intelligence at Express Employment International, Stephanie Miller. Stephanie, thanks so much for joining me this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You know, a lot of former federal employees are newly back on the job market, in some cases for the first time in decades. From what your research shows, what is surprising them most about how hiring and networking are working today?
I think that what's really changed is it's used to be a very linear experience. And now you really have to think about going about the processes like, what are the things that I need to do? It's not just applying to one area. It could be using multiple resources, both social media, third-party help like a staffing company, doing some direct outreach yourself. So it is managing the whole process instead of before. I think it was a little bit more clear and linear.
Your survey recently found that many professionals now describe networking as transactional rather than personal. We've always heard build your network, engage your network. When we say networking now, what kinds of behaviors are we actually talking about?
Yes, I think what we're looking for is we want to build your brand, if you will, in all different areas. So when you think about your LinkedIn accounts and your social media accounts and how you put your resume together, you want that voice of who you are to be very clear and concise, because oftentimes people will see one or more approaches to your background before you even have a chance to speak. So you're trying to be really concise on who you are and get that message across, because it doesn't often happen as relational as it used to, with a phone call or an in-person interview as the first point of contact. So you're just trying to get it in every direction, where when somebody sees who you are and what your experience is, it's showing your voice and what you have to offer.
You started that response with a word that might scare a lot of people, branding. What's your brand? It sounds very vogue, I guess, but what does that really mean for people? What should they be trying to communicate?
Again, I think when we consider our career, if you go back even not too long ago, it was the thought of, I'm applying for a job, a career. Today, your experience and your education and what you're open to can be different than that. And a lot of times what you're trying to give the future employer or your future position is, what are some of the things that weren't on your resume that you offer to that company? Is it flexibility or leadership? Those are pieces that we used to really focus on, like hard skill. And now we want to give the whole picture and show, where is our adaptability and how can I really portray that to my future employer? Because we're looking for that when we're trying to make new hires. And so I think it's a little bit broader of a sense of, what am I willing to do and what do I bring to the table? And a lot of those soft skills and other experiences are important. And we want to be able to showcase that.
You're hitting on something that is a concern we hear from a lot of former feds. These are folks who have spent sometimes decades in very technical, deep expertise kinds of positions. Their resume runs multiple pages, and it's really challenging for them to get down to those kind of nuggets about skills and what they offer. What are the big recommendations that you offer there?
Well, I think that's where that networking helps. It isn't just reliant on our resume anymore. The resume is a great depiction of experience, but what you want to do is bring that human piece back. There's so many attributes that people have that even they overlook. So what is that first impression that you can make? And how do you bring your communication style, if you will, to things like your LinkedIn account and your social media? I think those are ways where we start to delineate ourselves from just our qualifications, but more who we are as a future employee. And, when you think about that, if it's been a while and it feels, I don't know, intimidating to decide what that should be or how to approach it, using multiple sources like a staffing company can help you just ask somebody, what should I be highlighting? What are the questions that I could consider myself so I know what skills I have that maybe I haven't put on a resume? Oftentimes, if you've worked in something for so long, you almost take for granted some of the wonderful things you bring to an employer. You need somebody else to look at it and say, don't forget, you led this or you were impactful here. So having, even if it's a professional friend or colleague, look at what you've done and give you some of that feedback, you can find those true pieces of who you are that you just need to let shine, because it's more than just qualifications. It's how we're going to re-engage with potentially a different type of company. Now we're going private industry or something like that. So it's having that other voice, because I think people tend to downplay their own experience, specifically if they've done it a long time and they just feel like it's part of everyday job.
I'm speaking with Stephanie Miller. She's Managing Director of Business Intelligence at Express Employment International. Stephanie, I want to follow up on what you just said, because again, coming at it from the Fed or former Fed perspective, these are folks who've been trained to be pretty humble about what can be massive accomplishments. How do they get over that, humility obstacle to really be able to present their talents and their skills to a new employer in a way that engages them?
Certainly. I think the first thing is just to understand that the market isn't harder. It's just a little different. And so understanding those differences gives you that confidence that, okay, with the right preparation, I can get everything aligned and put my voice into the market, and there is opportunity. We have places for people to really grow and take their career to the next step. But really having that adaptability to understand that you need to bring in multiple facets of communication, like your LinkedIn accounts and revising your resume and meeting with those colleagues and really providing that insight to what you bring to your new employer will help you navigate feeling like, oh, this has been a long time, or I'm not sure where to go. So I would say prepare and then understand it's going to be a little bit different, but there is great opportunity out there.
Well, let's circle back then to the networking question. And you've described a number of social media approaches to networking. A lot of people think, in the old days, it was going to job fairs and glad handing and meeting people. So for folks who are re-entering the job market now, how should they be thinking about networking in terms of specific steps, specific outreach? Where do they start?
I would start with your own network. So you have people that you've worked with. Be intentional on who those people are. It's amazing what we can do as a community of, professionals. What are they looking at? What are they seeing in the market? And then, take that information and really reflect on, are you open to different roles or contract-based positions? Are there things you haven't considered that could be a viable option for you? And so having that idea that I don't want to assume this is going to be exactly like my last job search. I want to be prepared for what I'm open to and what I frankly don't want to do. That gets your mind in the right set to begin the preparation process. And then do your online presence, find third-party help if you have it in your community so that you get that professional guidance. All of those things will make this much easier for them.
Let's flip this over to the employer side, the hiring manager. What are they most looking for as they're considering new applicants? And when they look at a former Fed, what comes to mind for them?
I think that there is maybe a preconception that if you were a federal employee, that it was very structured and traditional. And what we see with employers is there is a little bit more weight in adaptability and flexibility. So companies are navigating change much quicker than they have in the past, and even qualifying positions at a higher level, meaning even if it was an entry-level position before, it has a higher technical requirement today just because of how business operates. So I would say that if you could assess your ability to highlight those things, I would. That's what companies are looking for.
And we're hearing a lot about AI as the mediator in this space. What's your piece of advice for how folks should be thinking about that as they're considering building their networks and new opportunities?
I think that AI will impact virtually most positions, but it's not going to replace them. So what is the human factor that cannot be replaced by AI? If we can really identify that functionality, then we will always be needed in our workspace. So that's what I would think about. How do you make this human? What are the pieces you bring that cannot be replaced? And many positions, almost all of them have that piece. It's just about retraining our mindset, our framework of what we offer and how we get companies to understand my expertise along with my ability to learn technology will bring what to the company? That's the question we want to answer.
I've been speaking with Stephanie Miller. She's Managing Director of Business Intelligence at Express Employment International. Stephanie, thanks so much for joining me, and thanks so much for this very practical advice. We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts.